So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I would like to welcome Professor Moses, who has been living, sleeping, and eating and breathing entrepreneurship for the past 30 years. And he is from Kenya, and I'm really obliged and thankful that he spared his time on the Sunday. And you can see the picture of Technical University of Mombasa. He has been teaching entrepreneurship and trying to help the young people of his country in various ways. And we got connected through Professor Michael Morris, I think, which is a common person which came out. And so I think we'll be looking forward to, this is a graduation ceremony of young Kenyans coming out of school. So I just collected some pictures to make our friends and colleagues at students at IBA to feel like how things are happening in the other part of the world. So the people also graduate, they also become happy. And this is a picture of the entrance. And this is the case which I used to teach in my MBA program, Honey Care Africa, and so on and so forth. So with this, I would like to welcome all of the participants. And going back to the screen, we have like 53 people right now. And we have people from Iran, Ali Yusuf is there, Chatral. We have people, Asim Hussain Saab from Islamabad. Wow. Asim Bhai, wonderful. Asim Saab is a Stanford graduate, did his MBA from Fuqua School of University, School of Business. And a lot of people coming in. Wa alaikum assalam. And we have this gentleman, Sain Shoro is here, the person with buffaloes. And he is class 0 educated, Moses. He's never been to a school. He has 10 buffaloes. And he's taking part in our course. Look at the power of entrepreneurship. And he can't understand English, but maybe his son will translate. Shafiq Ahmed sahab, kahan se bol rahe hain, sir? Ye Shafiq Ahmed sahab hamare hain ya Saudi Arab wale hain? Okay, so we have people from other parts. So over to you, Moses. Please introduce yourself a bit and introduce something about Kenya and how is entrepreneurship different, agriculture, trading. Is there any option that Pakistanis can trade and do entrepreneurship with Kenyans or do something together? What is social entrepreneurship? What is women entrepreneurship in Kenya?
So thank you very much, Professor Shahidi, for such an introduction. It's quite a very good introduction. And again, like I've seen, it's like you have a lot of, you know more about Kenya. So I don't know if I should be able to continue because I've seen a lot that you have presented there. But all in all, thank you very much. You've given the introduction. I'm Moses Ngoze. I'm a lecturer at Technical University of Mombasa in entrepreneurship. Well, the journey of entrepreneurship, I'm going to describe in my presentation as I move on. So probably I can share the screen. Let me share the screen.
Yes, sir, I'm doing it. Okay. So here you go, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for the wait. And here we have Professor Moses, senior lecturer at School of Business, Mombasa.
Oh, that's fine. Now, I'm going to share the insight about entrepreneurship in Africa, the Kenyan perspective. Next slide, please.
Okay.
Now, a little bit about myself. I've got more than 20 years in entrepreneurship as an educator. Now, prior to being an educator, my formative education, that is primary, secondary, high school, and then to the university, I pursued an undergraduate degree in economics and mathematics, and then did entrepreneurship at master's level, and then at PhD level also did entrepreneurship. Then I've done so many courses. The Professor Morris education class, that is the education class. Now, I've come up with curriculum, and I'm also a member of International Council for Small Businesses. Now, in terms of research and scholarship, my area of concentration has always been the entrepreneurship orientation and in large firms, it's known as corporate entrepreneurship. Just the previous slide. And back, please. And I'm also a consultant, can be able to see mentor, editor, and in administration, I'm currently an academic lead of entrepreneurship at Technical University of Mombasa. So that is me. So I've been doing entrepreneurship all the way. Now, for today, let us try to look at this entrepreneurship. But before we look at entrepreneurship in Kenya, we understand that entrepreneurship is a process as well as a discipline. Now, it being a process, all things that are involved in identification of opportunities, all things that have to do with taking risks. And then as a discipline, of course, people study it. I've studied entrepreneurship. There are people who are studying entrepreneurship, as scholars, so that they can be able to help maybe in lecturing and also working. So in this particular context, I'm going to look at a Kenyan perspective of entrepreneurship, shown by micro, small, and medium enterprises, and then institutions of learning. Next slide, please.
I'm using the marker, Abdullah, don't worry.
No problem. So the agenda for today is as shown below. So I'll be able, Professor Shahidi showed much about Kenya, and then talk about micro, small, and medium enterprises. That is now the anchor of all this particular discussion, and then a little bit touch on the institutions of learning and entrepreneurship, and give a conclusion and recommendation, and probably we can be able to have a shorter video about opportunities in Kenya. Next, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Now, when you look at micro, small, medium enterprises in Kenya, given so many definitions, so many definitions are used in different parts of the world. But here in Kenya, we have a Micro Small Enterprise Act of 2020, which clearly identifies the micro, small, and medium enterprises. When you look at small, how small is small? In Africa, we have got micro. When you go to America, it becomes small, and probably in Karachi, maybe those micro, I don't know whether they exist. But in Kenya, we talk of the micro enterprises as those particular farms, trade, service industries that you must have a turnover of around $5,000 and employ between 1 and 9 people. And then also when you look at the manufacturing sector of this micro, you need around $50,000. And then small enterprises, are those particular farms, between 5,000 and $50,000 to start them, and basically these small, they are not quite many, in the country. Micro are the ones which are quite many. And then we talk of the medium enterprises, which basically employ between 51 and 100 people. And you need approximately $300,000 to be able to begin them. But as we are going to see in the discussion, you'll discover that the country, these two are quite dominant. Next slide, please. Now, just up a little bit. These small enterprises, why small enterprises? Just before Professor Shahidi, just before we go to that, the next one. Yeah, before the previous one, sorry for that. The previous slide. Yeah, that's fine. Why is this micro small enterprise? And that one typically explains why these small enterprises have been regarded as the citadel of entrepreneurship. It's because about large proportion of them, 75% of Kenyans are engaged in it, and the working class, 80%. And then the country GDP, when you look at the country GDP, 34% of the country GDP, comes from there. And then it's an engine of employment creation. Large number of women are found in this particular sector. And then innovation, we're going to look at it being the center of innovation, especially ICT in Kenya, and then contribute significantly to the income generation, that is industrialization. we need to be industrialized. And then a training grounds for potential entrepreneurs, and then provides linkages and networking. So all of this, when you look at these particular factors, they tend to move towards entrepreneurship. That is creating entrepreneurship culture. Next slide, please. So from the next particular slide, we can be able to see the state of entrepreneurship in the country. Next slide, please, Professor Shahidi. Next slide, please. We can be able to see the state of entrepreneurship in Kenya. That is, you can be able to see entrepreneurship in Kenya basically began during the independence. Now, mostly in 1990s is when a lot of attention has been taken on these enterprises. For instance, you can be able to see in those particular pictures that, the technology which they have been using is quite an archaic technology, a technology that is not quite, not good, for the modern enterprises. Now, this is due to factors that lead to, to these particular enterprises, not, performing very well. Like, for example, lack of finance, things like lack of training, things like lack of infrastructure, given that we are developing countries, a little bit of infrastructure has not developed so much. So all of this, and given that we are coming into the COVID, situation now. Just make it a full screen, please. So this is the one, yes. the state of SM of micro small medium enterprises in Kenya. That is the Juakali. Now, Juakali is a Kiswahili name, and it means working under the hot sun. So if you look at these particular pictures, you can be able to see that most of the enterprises, during those 90s, they used to work, under the hot sun. And even nowadays, when you come to Kenya, you say Juakali, people are going to, it's quite related, it's quite related to that micro, small, and medium enterprises. Next slide, please. So these challenges I've already described. These are quite common in these particular enterprises. The financial aspect, infrastructure, market access. In fact, this market access now, it's all over the world with this COVID-19, and then inadequate entrepreneurial skill and low technological employed, limited linkages with medium and large enterprises, inability to identify competitive strengths, all the way until many of them having inadequate financial resources. Now, when I talk about financial resources, here I'm talking about, resources such as machineries. The first point talks about credit. Next slide, please. Now, all of these particular factors in the 90s and probably before the COVID has led to what we call the missing gap in the micro-small enterprise growth. When you talk about this, the growth of micro-small enterprise, others have occurs when enterprises, like now small or micro-small enterprises, they grow on the same level. And then vertical has to do with when they graduate from one level to the other level, from micro-small enterprise to medium enterprise, and then to large enterprise. Now, what is happening in Kenya, you'll see that we have got what is called the missing middle. We don't have many medium or middle enterprises. So this is quite a very big, issue, that in fact, most of the scholars, we have been trying to study what is the reason. And those reasons are attributed to those particular problems that we have indicated above. And probably many of them would like to be small. Of course, you know that small is beautiful. So let's move on to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. Now, these particular challenges I've indicated about the market. There's this COVID-19 that has come up. we have got border closure. Like for instance, Kenya and Tanzania, most of the borders of East Africa, they have been closed, especially Kenya, Tanzania, Kenya, Somalia, Kenya, Uganda. There are very limited movements. So what does this mean to the small enterprises? They cannot be able to take their merchandise. They cannot access the market, the regional market. Restriction of movement and curfews. Now, these curfews, especially at the moment in Kenya, we are under the curfews that begin at around 9 p.m. at night and ends at 5. So what does it mean? You know that most of the small enterprises or most of the entrepreneurs, that is actually a good time for them to work. So this again brings a problem. Now, limited operations of the market, economic slowdown from 5.4 to 1%. This is anticipated by the World Bank and the statistics from the Kenya Bureau of Statistics that the economy is going to dwindle due to this particular, closure of activities. And then the currency volatility. That is our Kenyan currency has gone down. The value has really gone down. And at the moment, we are having $1 to, being exchanged at 112 of Kenya shillings. So what does this mean? It means that, things that most of the entrepreneurs maybe might want to import from outside to make use of are very expensive. And then, of course, inflation. When you talk about inflation now, there are no commodities. If you talk about raw materials, they cannot be able to get. So what does this mean? The currency is we are going to have too much currency chasing too few goods. And then talk about interest rate. Now, interest rate, though the government under the Central Bank of Kenya reduced the interest rate, the nominal interest rate, but still, that is not enough. And then financial market, banks are willing to lend money at this particular time because they fear the risks that are involved in terms of the payments. Next slide, please. Next slide. Now, at the moment, this is the current state. I will be talking about the state that existed the other 90s. Now, currently in this particular period of time, that is in this particular years, we are having a lot of development of these small enterprises. And this is courtesy of what we call TVET, the Technical Vocational Educational Institutions that are training diploma. So you can be able to see that they are now moving to that machine industry. Now look at this particular mobile, they are transacting using the mobile money. Of course, Kenya is celebrated as one of the countries that this mobile money transfer is quite, robust. Let's move to the next slide, please. Now, these are the opportunities that we are talking about. The innovation in ICT. Kenya, at the moment, you're talking about the capital city of Kenya being termed as the future Silicon Valley, Silicon Savannah. Now, it's a Silicon Savannah in Africa because, most of the startups are coming up, especially in the ICT. You give any young Kenyan a phone and can be able to innovate what you want, they can be able to do things with that. We have got so many hubs in Kenya. And probably at the end of this particular presentation, I'm going to, you're going to watch this 4 minutes YouTube, this one that talks about how Silicon Savannah has grown in the country, how innovation, especially the agile mobile banking system has grown. Next slide, please. Now, I've been talking about that. With this particular ICT innovation, it has brought what we call techno-entrepreneurs, or what we call techno-entrepreneurship. And probably it's a new field that we can be able to think about in entrepreneurship, digital entrepreneurship, where nowadays we have to move to the digital. So we have so many apps that are coming up. For example, in terms of the farming, we have we have what we call iCow, for the cows, the Matri route. Actually, this particular app has been made in such a way that, in Kenya, we have got a lot of, the infrastructure, given that it's not quite good. I mean, it's not quite developed. So we have got a lot of jams in Kenya. So we've got the Mark 3 route app that usually informs the motorists on, can I be able to use this particular route? Is it good route? We also talk of the Shahidi. Shahidi is about, revealing in a Kiswahili word, in that it means, being a watch. You try to identify, if there's anybody who, maybe is doing things which are not in order, can be able to reveal, privately to the police. Then Eneza, and then Mawingu, and then coming to the Konza Technology City, which is quite coming up, and you're going to be able to see it in that particular video that will come. Next slide, please.
I have my name in Kenya, Shahidi. Yeah? Wow. So I'm pretty popular.
That's an application. That's
wonderful.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Next slide, please. Now, also talk about new niches. We're talking about new supply of commodities, whereby we are talking of outsourcing, leveraging the ICT, like you've seen the way the young people are making use of that technology to come up with the applications, franchising, leasing, nowadays, especially I talk about franchising in what we call the public service vehicles that usually carry people, ferry people from one place to another. So what is happening is that nowadays we talk of the formation of the circles, whereby they franchise, they use the same, franchising actually is whereby you can be able to use somebody's name to promote your product. So that is coming up, and it looks like an opportunity for Kenyan entrepreneurs. And then innovating and keeping up with the new technologies. Now, this fourth industrial generation is something that, is quite offers a very huge opportunity, all over the world. So Kenyans, we're also trying to come to be at par with this particular technology, like big data, robotics, So this is an opportunity that, though it's not running at the moment, but it's an opportunity that can offer a very huge opportunity for Kenyans. Next slide, please. Now, talking about the policy implication, also policies, with the policies that have come up in the country, this also offers a very huge opportunity for the small, small, and medium enterprises. The Vision 2030, the sessional paper, the Kenya 4 agenda that is in place, offers a very big opportunity. Next slide, please. Now, these opportunities like Vision 2030, you've gone very, this Vision 2030, it's economic pillar. It talks about industrialization in the country. So this, with this industrialization, we see very huge opportunities, opportunities in technology, industries, in science, and so on. And then sessional paper number 9 of 2012 and sessional paper number 2 of 2005 about, national industrialization, legal regulation, environment, how do we promote these particular enterprises? And more of these particular papers, these sessional papers have led, to coming up with very many opportunities. Like, for example, talk about the banking sector reducing the credit, is courtesy of these sessional papers. And then the Kenyan Industrial Transformation Program of 2015, which assigns a central role for small enterprises. And with this particular program, they have encouraged the small enterprises to be supplying commodities to the government, and hence trying to solve the issue of, the market for small enterprises. And then we have the Big Four agenda. Now, this was the president who indicated that we should be able to have this particular four agenda, which wants to uplift the manufacturing industry to 20%. We know that in most of the African countries, most of our raw materials we export to other countries for what? For processing. So we need to grow the manufacturing sector if we really want to develop. So this is a very huge, huge opportunity for the enterprises. Next, please. Now, with this, also, there's a market access. Of course, I've spoken about 30%. This is what is called the government procurement to the youth. Sometimes we call it AGOP, access to government procurement opportunities, whereby the youths and female entrepreneurs or women entrepreneurs are given 30% of the government tenders. So these are very huge, huge opportunities for those who are running as enterprises. And it's always indicated, whenever they make any announcement they do that. Now, there's also the initiative of Buy Kenya, Build Kenya policy and strategy. Now, this is through the slogans, whereby people are encouraged to consume commodities of Kenya. This is a huge opportunity for small enterprises. And then regional economic integration. We have got the East African community. Now, the East African community is made up of Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, Southern Sudan, Uganda, So these, they form what we call the East African community. And then the common markets, COMESA, includes all the countries in South Africa. So we usually have, they open the markets for some of the products to be taken there. And then the World Trade Organization also, like the AGOA, the AGOA, the American Growth Opportunity Act, that allows most of the industries in Kenya, under what we call export processing zones, to be able to, to export commodities to America, export processing zone. And then the access to finance, we've seen so many finance programs being initiated, like Women Enterprise Fund, that's meant to assist the women. We have got savings and credit cooperative or SACCOs, and we also talk of the microfinance institution. So this is a very huge, huge opportunity, because they lend the money to women or youths, and they can be able to use it to start businesses. Next slide, please. Now, also we talk of the institutional support. These now are those institutions that the government has created. Well, I'll just mention a few. Kenya Industrial Research and Development Institute, KIRDI. Now, this is for commercialization. Then we talk of Kenya Industrial Property Institute, KIPI. Now, this is for the registration of intellectual acts. And then the KIE, of course, to give the finances. ICDC for finance also. IDB, Kenvest. Now, this Kenvest just came the other time, and the Kenvest has been, for those who are willing to come and invest in the country. When you go to Karachi, where we've got our embassy there, you can be able to get a lot of information about Kenya. So it's through under Kenvest. This authority is also, they have got offices in the embassies all over the world. Now, Export Promotion Council, Export Processing Zones, I've already talked about it. National Industry Training Authority, NITA. This is for training the youth. In fact, this National Industrial Training Authority, NITA, there's a program that is being funded by the World Bank and the Kenyan government. So this particular National Industrial Training Authority it's also playing a role in facilitating it. That's called KYOP. That is Kenya Youth Employment Opportunity Program, KYEOP, Kenya Youth Employment Opportunity Program. So they are running trainings, and those particular training are to enhance entrepreneurship. And then the Micro Small Enterprise Authority also plays that particular role. And then lastly, we are talking, not very lastly in this particular part, we talk about IBM. Now there's a lab that facilitates, about big data in East and Central Africa, and it's located at Catholic University. This is a lab where big data is analyzed. We also talk of the Google. Google, they also have their offices in the country. And then Huawei, they also partner with the government in the training of the youth under some programs that the government has initiated for entrepreneurship. Next slide, please. Now, coming to Corona, the government has put in place some measures, for this Corona or COVID-19. Now, there is the tax relief, tax rate. However, most of these particular, apart from 16%, most of these particular measures, have not taken off, But the reduction of 16% to 14%, and turnover tax rate. So these particular measures are put in place to cushion the micro, small, and medium enterprises during this particular COVID period. Of course, the central bank has reduced the base rate to 7.25% from 8.25%. What does it mean? It means, the commercial banks can have a lot of money which they can advance in terms of loans. And of course, the cash reserve ratio. So all of these measures are what we call the monetary and physical measures, which are meant, to cushion the small enterprises. Next slide, please. Now, this particular picture shows the state the way it is. I remember when the Corona just came in, the head of state, the president of the Republic of Kenya, directed that people should not make use of liquid money transaction. They should not transact using cash money. Let them use what we call the M-Pesa. Now, M-Pesa is a mobile application whereby people do transaction using the mobile phone. They use M-Pesa, M-P-E-S-A, M-Pesa. M means mobile, and then pesa means money. Pesa is a Kiswahili word meaning money. So it enables one to be able to transact using, it's just like a bank. That bank.
We also use Paisa in Pakistan. We also use Paisa.
That's fine. Next, please. Now, let me now move on to the institution of learning, that's where I'm located now. Now, in the institution of learning, we can be able to see that entrepreneurship, in the country, we have got the new curriculum that is known as competence-based curriculum. Now, this curriculum, it has pre-primary school, secondary school. Now, in the primary school, entrepreneurship is introduced as creative activities. You need to do the process of creativity for the young ones, so that they know how to identify opportunities, to tap the talents they have. So in the secondary school is where now it comes closer to entrepreneurship itself, like business studies. It takes the form of business studies, and this is examined. It's going to be examined. But for this particular curriculum, it's not compulsory course. Now, coming to colleges, technical vocational education training, that's known as TVET. This entrepreneurship is offered at all levels, starting from the certificate, diploma, higher national diploma. We have got specializations. People are taking this as programs. And then the core subject, entrepreneurship, is taught as entrepreneurship education, which has to instill what we call entrepreneurship skills to the ones who attend colleges. Now, when you go to the universities, how is this entrepreneurship in the universities? Now, in the universities, we also talk about, next slide, please. We talk about entrepreneurship that is taught as a core subject. When you talk about core subject, we talk of it being a university-wide course for undergraduate. All undergraduates in most of the public universities have to take what we call entrepreneurship. So we talk of 32 public and 27 private universities. Then talk about it being core. It runs across all programs from engineering, talk about medicine, and so on. Now, as a specialization, in the university, we talk we talk of the Bachelor of Commerce, Bachelor of Business Administration, Bachelor of Business Management. All of these particular, the name might the name might be different, but this entrepreneurship specialization, and then as a degree program, we have got some of the universities, that are offering this Bachelor of Science in Entrepreneurship, Bachelor of Entrepreneurship Management, master's level. In fact, even in my university, we have Master of Science in Entrepreneurship, but you don't have doctor at the moment. So talk about Doctor of Philosophy in Entrepreneurship, and all of these are part of degree programs that are offered. Now, we also talk of the centers. Now, we talk of the centers of entrepreneurship development. You have got a few universities that have got centers, and then business incubators, also a few universities that have this. So this is a challenge, especially the centers. It's a challenge because maybe the donors, or maybe it's not mandate. Most of the universities have not put it in their strategic plan. Now, what I can be able to say about the institution of learning, entrepreneurship itself, at the moment, it's quite rampant as a core unit. Most people take that entrepreneurship. But when it comes to the specialization, the numbers are dwindling at the bachelor's level. But at the other levels, they are quite good. So let's move to the other slide, please. Next slide, please. Now, allow me now to come to the conclusion and recommendation. Now, one, we discover that MSME, micro, small, medium enterprises are core to the whole economy. Why? Because there are areas whereby entrepreneurship is nurtured. There are areas that we talk of people being self-employed, taking risks, which are features of entrepreneurship. So we should continue. It's a key sector in the Kenyan economy. Now, ICT-based SMEs are also very core in the country. And then more support for MSE through business development services. What are business development services? Now, this refers to training, accessing finance, mentoring, coaching, or all of these particular aspects. And then need to address the missing middle. Now, we talk of the missing middle. I indicated that particular framework that indicated that the middle are missing. So what can we be able to do as researchers? Now, need to come up with measures to cushion the SMEs during the coronavirus or COVID-19, and then learning institutions to foster entrepreneurship through teaching. When you look at the learning institution, we need to up the game, especially in the entrepreneurship. So with that, I would like to finish up, but maybe Professor Shahidi, you can be able to show that particular, there's in that particular slide of the Silicon Valley, you can be able to show the video for 4 minutes about the innovation in the country. Yeah.
Exactly. Actually, it seems that my computer is hung up.
Oh, it's hung up.
And well, let's see. Let's wait for a minute. But my friend Abdullah is in Multan. Maybe we can get it. But maybe we can take a few questions. We can share the video. But if I do anything more, my computer will shut down, I think. So I can still see you, and you can hear me. So it's a very interesting story of interventions taking place at the national level. So you have around 450 universities, and you have a relatively stable economy, I think. Pakistan is suffering from very, very high inflation and a lot of money devaluation. Our currency has gone to around 160, if I remember. I don't know the latest rates. So, but we have a very thriving population. We have people of a lot of energy and enthusiasm. 200 universities in Pakistan. 200 universities. We have pretty much developed people in science and technology, and it's a training hub. But I think still we have a lot to learn from each other, and we can learn from each other. Abdullah, can you please, we can take a few questions, but I would like to welcome my friends from Kenya who have joined us. Abdullah, can you highlight those names, Abdullah, and maybe they can switch on their camera and we can just please say hello and welcome to Pakistan.
Sure, sir. Let me.
These are some of the students of Moses. They are the students of Moses, or maybe Moses can call them to come forward and introduce them quickly, because we value our guests a lot. They are very important people, and we appreciate
Let
that
me
today
see.
is the beginning of a long-term friendship between Pakistan and Kenya. The friendship is between people, actually. It's the hearts. It's the hearts. It's the hearts, which when they come closer, then we find opportunities, and it's very important as the things are happening in the US internationally. It's
That's
very, very
fine.
important to understand that we are one family. Very important to understand Moses, but every man, whatever religion, caste, color, language he is, everybody has to understand that we are one family. We are the sons and daughters of Abraham. So Moses is my cousin. So I have a lot of cousins in Mombasa. And
Karibu.
Moses has a lot of cousins in Karachi. So we are all cousins. We are all relatives in blood. Our great, 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 great grandfather was the same. Our great, 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 great grandmother was the same. So this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, the God Almighty has created diversity in terms of thinking, speech, color, languages. So each and every person is a manifestation of the greatness of God Almighty. And I'm really thankful that we need to learn this message. It's very important, actually. And many American friends, they keep on talking to me, and I say, we the Americans. And I keep on saying this, my gentlemen, my friend, don't say this. We the people of this world, we are all one family. We are one family.
That's fine.
So it's because entrepreneurship, I think it can only take a boost when it is based on love, equal opportunities. When entrepreneurship is based on creativity, innovation, and service. So Moses, you're right. I was looking at your research that access to money is very important. And we used to follow this, but in 2014, we said, no, we're not going to believe in this. Because what we say is that, Moses, we got inspiration from Moses and Jesus. Moses and Jesus, what Moses had in his hand in Quran, it says, "Batilka bi yaminika ya Musa, batilka bi yaminika ya Musa." And God says, "Oh Moses, what is in your hand?" Qalu asaya. And Moses said, "There's a stick in my hand. There's a stick in my hand." So God said, "Put that stick. What do you do with the stick?" And you know what Moses said? I use it to get, fruits from the trees. I use it to herd sheep. I use it to lay down and bend down. I have a cloak, and I put it half cloak down and half I sleep. So when we look at the life of Moses and even Jesus, they were extremely parsimonious, creative, innovative, close to nature. They were very much environmentally and socially and ethically sensitive. They lived a life of service. They lived a life of love. So I think, you see, the message that we need money is not natural, actually. This is what our poet, the poet of the East, his name is Iqbal, and he was the founder. He died in 1938, I remember, I think. 1938, Iqbal. And he did a PhD in Germany, and he was a great philosopher. And he said in his one of the verse, he says, "Apni duniya aap paida kar agar zindon mein hai." The meaning is that if you are alive, then create your own world. And he said he used Moses in his poetry. So once again, your name is very important today for us. And he says that, "Jo zarbe kalimi nahi rakhta, wo hunar kya?" He said that who cannot emulate the life of Moses, you cannot copy and live the life of Moses, then you do a PhD or a master's, it doesn't matter. That is not a great skill, actually. The great skill is to have the qualities of Moses. In Arabic, we call Moses, his nickname is Kalim.
Kalim.
Means Kalim. Kalim means in Arabic, the one who talks. In Quranic, in scriptures, it is said that Moses was the one who got the opportunity to talk with God. So that's why his name is Musa Kalim. Moses who talked with God. So the poet says, Jo zarbe kalimi nahi rakhta, wo hunar kya? If you have an MBA, executive MBA, a PhD, doesn't matter, man.
That's true.
You need to have the qualities of Moses. You need to have that belief, trust, and service, and humility. So our model, which we started in 2015 and at IBA Karachi, and I just take a few minutes to introduce. That is based on the Moses and Abrahamic and Jesus and Prophet Muhammad. So if we want to be a Muslim, and even my Hindu friends are there in the class, and I also respect them. And I think that many things are common in our Abrahamic. And one, my Hindu friends in the class, there's a scholar in India, he says, his name is Kalim, and he says that if you remove the word I from Abraham, you know what happens? Yusuf Khuzaima Sahaba, Ibrahim ka I hataएं तो क्या बनेगा? What will happen? If I remove I, what will the word become? So that's what a researcher in India, Kalim Saab, and he's taken some inspiration from Abu Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, that says that Abraham went to India and he got married here, and the Brahmins are, maybe there's a high chance they are the descendants of Abraham. So my Hindus are my cousin as well. So I have a lot of cousins all over in Kenya, in India, in all over the world. Yusuf साहब आपके भी हैं cousins? Yusuf Khuzaima आप नजर आ रहे हैं, आपके हैं cousins सर? फिजी आइलैंड में?
सर पाकिस्तान में ही है सारे, इंडिया में तो कोई नहीं है
यार। मेरी तकरीर का सत्यानाश कर दिया, आधा घंटा हो गया मैं तकरीर करते हुए. We have cousins all over the world.
सर वो वाले हिसाब से तो है सर, उस वाले हिसाब से तो दूर के उससे तो मतलब वो जनरेशन के उसमें तो है.
Yes, so please talk in English. So I'm asking Yusuf that I have cousins all over the world. So this is the message of our center, Moses.
Yes.
We teach this in the entrepreneurship class. That, hey, gentlemen, we have to ensure that we need to know we can't respect everybody unless our concept is not clear. And then the second thing was that the life of the Moses, and then third thing we say is the resources are in your mind, in your head.
Yeah, that's capital. We call it human capital.
Exactly. So human capital, your brain capital, your thoughts. If somebody has, that's why once again I'm thankful to our poet.
All right.
I tell you, Michael Morris does not have answer to these things. I tell you. The Americans cannot answer that. They're too materialistic. I don't want to criticize anybody. Some people are really good. I really learned from Clayton. Clayton Christensen is exactly talking the same words.
No, that's it's true.
Clayton and Henry. So our national poet said, "Ek fakr hai jo sikhata hai miskini aur dilgiri." There's a form of poorhood which makes you a beggar. But there's a form of less resources, which makes you brave, makes you creative. So he says that the poorship is not in your physical; it's your mind. It's a state of mind, actually.
Sure.
An African woman who's raising honey and making $50 a month, but she's happy and healthy and caring and loving and taking care of her two sheep. She's enjoying life. Who says she is poor? Who says she is poor? She is enjoying life. So why are we calling that you need to have a car and a big house in the United States of America? That's not a definition of success.
It's true.
So sorry, I had to talk a lot. Any question from Moses, please?
Assalamu alaikum,
I can ask a question.
Sir, I can ask.
जी शफीक साहब, केन्या में चीजें बेचनी है बताएं सर.
ये अहमद बिलाल मंसूर ने काफी देर से हाथ खड़ा किया है। अहमद
चलो
बिलाल
पहले
मंसूर।
शफीक साहब को ले लेते हैं, फिर बिलाल मंसूर। शफीक, you'll have to talk in English. Shafik Saab.
Can you hear me, sir? Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Hello. Walaikum
Alaikum
salam.
salam.
Yes. My question is, sir, as you know, now due to this COVID-19 pandemic,
Yes.
everybody is it is hurting everybody. Either it is small entrepreneur or medium or large scale. So what do you see after this pandemic once finished? What do you see? Who will be more affected? Either large scale, small scale, or medium? And what is the future you see is more chance have in the future? Smaller, who is the more problem in my you see after this pandemic once finished?
Calm down.
Can I respond to it?
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Ahmed. Thanks for that question. Now, you wanted to know what post-COVID, what happens to both the small, medium, micro, and large enterprises. What is the future of these particular enterprises? Now, what I can say is that, well, in the first place, I would say that life looks to be very bleak. From a human perspective, when you look at the way most of the governments are doing, they have locked down. Like in Kenya, you know, we talk of micro, small, and medium enterprises contributing around 80% of employment. You know, so what is going to happen? Now, what is going to happen is that for sure, these particular enterprises, from a human perspective, life is very bleak for them. However, you know, when you read most of the history of successful companies, you know, read about CNN in America. Though I'm giving out examples of those big companies because those are the companies that we've been learning so much. Their data is available. CNN, look at Google, look at most big companies in the world. Most of them have been formed during the recession. You know, in fact, at the moment you can see Zoom. Everybody is using Zoom, Google. You know, and what will come later is that we might have these particular companies, you know, taking up the market in the future, and then their income is going to be large. So what I'm saying is that from the human perspective, from what we are seeing, you know, life is very bleak for most of these companies. However, you know, we usually say that when you take risk, you risk, you know, you risk and say in a moderate way, you know, high returns are going to come. So I would agree with you that this COVID, you know, with this closure that are happening, you know, life is very, very uncertain for most of these companies. But, you know, it's not the first. We have got recessions. Recessions were there. We had the swine flu, they are telling us, when we were not there. But most of the companies have been formed. And I like what Professor Shahidi said, that we should trust in God. When you trust in God, you know, we have got what we call human capital in us. We can be able to wither from those particular crises. Thank you, Hamid.
Ji Janab, mashallah, wonderful answer. Great. Moses, you made our day today.
Thank you.
You made our day today. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. So we have Abdullah. Anybody else?
Ahmed Bilal, Mansoor, and Asim Hussain.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Shahid. Dr. Moses, it was an amazing presentation, I would say, for anyone who would want to learn about what's happening in your country. I think this was an exhaustive document. The question that I have for you is to learn of. You already mentioned your analysis of COVID. Just wondering, are there any synergies that you see between between what you're doing in your country and what we are doing in Pakistan, and we can leverage upon those?
Thank you very much. Very good question.
Thank you for that question. Thank you. I didn't get your name very well. Now, when you talk about synergy, yeah, is where we can have a collaboration between Kenya and Pakistan. Now, I would like to give one of the idea that came around early this month, and it was populated by Professor Ayman.
Ayman from ICSB. Okay. Yes.
Executive Director of ISSB, International Council of Small Business. Now, that idea was that he was going to use the ISSB to be a forum where we can connect businessmen or people with ideas, or they want to engage in exchange of products from other countries with the other countries. So I still believe that if at all we can be able to create these particular forums, and again, if African countries, my country to speak, can be able to look to Pakistan for a market or of say tea, because I know in Pakistan you like our Kenyan tea so much. And
wow.
And then we talk of Pakistan, selling to our manufacturing industries, machineries. That will work out. I don't see any problem with that. I don't see any restrictions with that. However, the government to government, that the only problem can be now the government. And I believe that the ambassador of Kenya, who is based in Karachi there in Pakistan, was one of my colleague in academia. He's called Professor Bitok. I can be able to, when he comes back, probably in the country, I can be able to share with him and hear if there are any of the Pakistans who come to our embassy there to inquire about having exchange, say, of trade opportunities to do trade with the Kenyan companies. That is super. It can work out. I don't see any problem to that. But I would advise that you can use these particular forums of creating the market, creating the opportunity for exchange of ideas and exchange of the way we can be able to sell our products. People can also be able to export your things or products to the country. That's what I have.
Great, thank you very much. And any other questions, and then I will.
The last question from Asim Hussain, sir.
Asim Hussain is a Stanford graduate, and he did his MBA from Fuqua School of Business. Yes, Asim Bhai. And he has been on the board of Ignite, and he has been the MD of Pakistan Software Export Board. I really like him, and he's a very enthusiastic person. Asim Bhai.
Thank you, Dr. Shahid, for that introduction. Dr. Moses, nice presentation. I would be curious about the areas in which startups have been successful in Kenya, because Kenya is a success story for entrepreneurship. So is it like agriculture, health, education, tourism, e-commerce, payments? Because like we have this M-Copa success story where these low-income households were using their mobile phones to rent solar power on a monthly basis and pay as they go. So what have been some successful startups in Kenya?
Thank you very much, Hassan. I think I've gotten your name well. Now, absolutely, I would say that Kenya, we've been successful, especially in the ICT in the recent years. This comes up because of a lot of mobile phones, and if you can be able to watch that particular video, which due to unavoidable circumstances, I could not be able to share this time. Maybe Professor Shahid is going to share it with you. Yes. You'll be able to see that we've got a lot of startups that are beginning, successful startups, especially applications. I gave an example of one application that is known as iCow. Now, iCow is an application whereby, you know, for those who are farmers who are keeping cattle, you know, they're livestock farmers, they can be able to use this particular application to communicate with the veterinary officers, you know, if in case they say the cow has got a, you know, is sick, you know, they can be able to communicate. And apart from the iCow, we also talked about the M-Pesa. There's the M-Pesa, but nowadays, again, this M-Pesa, we have got what is known as M-Shwari. M-Shwari. Now, M-Shwari is a credit platform in which, you know, you can be able to access credit, you know, online. This is an application that, you know, Safaricom Kenya, of course, Safaricom Kenya, that is an affiliate of Vodafone in the world, are the ones who are running this. So you have got the M-Shwari, and nowadays, in fact, in Kenya, you'll discover that most of the people are taking credit through what we call the M-Shwari, you know. And then talk about the jam. I indicated about when you have the vehicles parking, you know, this jam. There is an application which also, you know, these young innovators came up with that has been able to, you know, to manage the jams, you know, in terms of informing people of which particular routes they can be able to follow so that they avoid the jam. So there's a lot that is coming up in this particular mobile application. Talk about even nowadays even an Uber and something similar to Uber. We have got what we call Little Cab in Kenya. Now that Little Cab in Kenya is whereby, you know, just the same application like Uber, whereby people can be able to request for taxi services online, you know, and also the mode of payment. So we have got so many startups that have come up, and we are proud of that, especially in the ICT. Kenya is becoming so vibrant in that, and we thank God for that.
I just want to add one thing, Moses and Asim Hussain Saab. You know, Kenya is way advanced in terms of ICT applications. I'm teaching the case Honeycare Africa since 2002. I came to know about in 2002 they had Easy Pesa in Kenya.
That's
the
right.
Farmers were selling honey, and in return the money was transferred into their mobile accounts. 2002, remember, 2002, that is like 18 years ago. And I don't.
Right. What has been the secret behind adoption of mobile money in Kenya? Because in Pakistan, we have had Jazz Cash and Easy Pesa for a decade now. But I think the transaction fee is pretty high here. And like maybe that is one of the reasons for lower uptake of mobile money in Pakistan.
Thank you for that. The secret has been that most of the households, most of the people in Kenya, they own mobile phones. And again, and also we have the issue of accessing to these particular commercial banks. You know, most of the people in Kenya, you know, because of the restrictions from the banks, you know, they have high interest rate. You know, when you have opened an account there, they charge you a lot of fees, you know, to maintain the account. So most of the Kenyans, by the virtue of them having the mobile phones, and also by the restriction that these particular banks are putting on most of their customers, so this becomes an easy way of having this mobile banking. And again, remember that the population of Kenya at the moment is dominated by the young people, those who have been born, let's talk of around 80s, 90s, 80s, 90s, 2000. You know, these are typically young people who are more educated, you know, and they can be able to.
The literacy rate is high now, is in Kenya.
Yeah, literacy is pretty high. It's pretty high. Yeah, so that's what is making the uptake to be very high of this. And again, of course, in Kenya, when you hear of Safaricom, you know, it's a brand. You know, Safaricom at the moment is that particular company that, you know, is the one that controls under Vodafone for this M-Pesa. So with their brand, you know, everybody wants to be closely connected to that Safaricom. Yeah, so that makes uptake of their product M-Pesa to be very, very high. And in fact, in Kenya, we also have other mobile companies that are offering these services, like Equity, but they are not taking it because of the brand. There's an aspect of the brand because of them being in this particular market for a very long time, and also the accessibility of Safaricom is quite very, very high. So they can, you know, they have spread out all over the country. So many people can access that M-Pesa.